Welcome to Coppa Feeling, where we dive deep into feeling all of the feelings. I'm Jess, and here we explore spiritual growth, personal development, yoga, meditation, and everything that helps you connect with your true self. Join me as we embrace the journey one feeling at a time. Hey everyone, welcome back to Cop a Feeling. This is that place where we feel all of our emotions and feelings. We dive deep into transformation and we just allow our inner light to shine. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Jess and I am so grateful that you are here with us today. So this is part 2 of our conversation around reigniting our illumination, finding that glow, and just really allowing our most authentic selves to come forward. So part 1, I spent talking about physical products and supplements, things that I utilize to help enhance my illumination, my glow, that leave me feeling really good in my body. So if you missed that, you can head back to the page and check out part 1. But this week, I am diving into that internal practice, the things that we can do to better our mindset and our habits and really just allow the rituals and practices that we invite into our life to really help elevate us into our most authentic self. So, settle in, maybe grab a journal, take some notes, or just allow yourself to receive what this episode has. And as always, take what resonates and leave the rest. Alright, so let's dive in. Today I want to start with cultivating a daily practice, a daily ritual that supports you. And in part 1, I talked about habit stacking and how I did that with some of the supplements that I take. And habit stacking is one of those things that, well, it translates all habits that we have. So it crosses over into our beliefs and mindsets and how we can begin to invite in new practices in a way that feels supportive versus like we're trying to dismantle everything and recreate something. So when it comes to daily practices, I like to keep things simple because simple is sustainable. If we start to pack on too many things, it can start to feel overwhelming and burdensome, and it just doesn't create long-term lasting practices. So when I'm looking to incorporate something new, a new habit, a new mindset, I like to look at what I'm already doing that I want to continue to do that can help support whatever the new practices that I want to invite in. And so I'm going to use the example of my daily walks. This has shifted throughout my life, but daily walks have been a non-negotiable, very consistent part of my life for probably the last 15 years, give or take. And in the season that I'm in now, my daily walks happen in the morning. And so I wake up and I go for my daily walk. And when I was starting to want to bring in more educational, inspirational, I wanted the content that was going to make me grow and find those mentors that maybe I didn't have in person, but that I could find through things like podcasts. I married those two things together. So when I would go for my walk, and this actually started when I was still back in law enforcement. And so my walks weren't morning walks, they were afternoon walks. But it was still the first thing I did when I got up, because I worked third shift. And so I was still starting out my day with movement. I was still bringing in uplifting, positive content. But that's how I started, was by marrying those two things. So I was already going for walks, and instead of listening to music or an audiobook or nothing at all, I would pick a podcast that was going to either educate me on something, that was going to motivate me or be inspirational. It was something that was adding a positive influence into my life. It was uplifting content that was advancing my skill set, my knowledge, my drive. And because I was doing that with something that I had already implemented, it became really, really easy. It was like, all right, I get up, I go for my walk, and I'm going to add in this podcast. So that's what I mean when we talk about habit stacking and adding in to things that we're already doing. Now, I will say, we go through seasons. So don't be afraid to change, to alter, to shift what your daily practice and rituals look like. Do I think that we should be changing them every 2 days or every week? No, because I think consistency lends itself to that sustainability and that support. But as we grow and evolve and change, our daily practices and rituals may have to change. And that is what has happened with this marriage of my daily walks and educational, inspirational content. So earlier this year, I got a download, an invitation to step away from constant consumption. And even though it was great content that I was consuming and I found value in it, it was starting to become hard to hear my own thoughts and my own voice in all of that. And so I stepped away from listening to anything on my walks. So I stopped listening to podcasts. I don't listen to music or audiobooks. And I just allow myself to be in that moment, on that walk, noticing, feeling, experiencing the nature that surrounds me, whatever it is and wherever I am on that walk, that's where I am. And my thoughts and my focus and my attention is on myself. And that's the season I needed to be in right now, to get clear on my message and what I'm bringing into the world and all of these things that were starting to get a little bit clouded with all of the consumption. Now, mind you, I still value educational and inspirational content, and I didn't want that to fall to the wayside. So I found a new way to incorporate that into my daily practice and ritual. So I read that type of content. I might read 10 pages, 10 minutes. I don't have a designated number, but that's how I currently start my day. So instead of jumping out of bed and immediately going on my walk, my mornings are a little bit slower. I take time, I read whatever book I'm currently reading to keep myself learning, to keep new information coming into my awareness. But that's the only thing that I'm focused on in that moment. And then I go out for my walk and I let myself really be with my thoughts and what's coming up. So don't be afraid to allow your rituals and your practices to change as you change. So I encourage you to implement the habit stacking, to take something that you're already doing in your life that you want to continue to do, and then use that to bring in a new habit so that they can support each other. And the beautiful thing with your habits and rituals, as they start to change and expand as you do, I'm not worried about my habit of positive consumption going away or falling into some mindless hole of entertainment that isn't uplifting or supportive to me. I'm not worried about that because I have built into my life this desire for inspiration and education in different ways and forms. So I'm not losing it, I'm just shifting how I consume it. So as you find the strength in your habits and your rituals, it becomes easier to make those changes to really support where you are in the season that you're currently in. So as we take a slight shift from our habits and our practices that we're creating to support us, I think something that goes hand in hand with this is our mindset. And it's the way we choose to craft our thoughts, the thoughts we choose to pay attention to, the stories that we tell ourselves. I think we can be really hard on ourselves and gravitate towards worst case scenarios versus best case scenarios. And so one of the things that I like to do, and I will do this a couple of times a year, but I do like to do it in the beginning of the year, maybe a mid-year and end of year kind of refresh, but it's to take a week and really micromanage my thoughts. Really pay attention to every single thought that I'm thinking, and in the moment reframe what I don't actually believe to be true. And it might not be a full week if you're starting out. When I first started this practice, it was just a couple of days, because what I found is that when you start to micromanage your thoughts and really pay attention to every single, not just thought, but the words that are comprising those thoughts, it is energetically draining. You are putting a lot of attention and energy into and focus into what it is you are thinking. But it makes such a big difference in how quickly you can reframe your thoughts, how quickly you can come out of a negative spiral and change it and bring it into an upward spiral. And I find that when I give myself that intention of being super focused on those words and thoughts, I see when I'm starting to slip back into comfortable thoughts. And what I mean by when I say comfortable thoughts, is the way that the majority of people are speaking. So when you are listening to how other people are speaking and they're saying, I have to go to the grocery store, I have to go pick up the kids, I have to do that, I should do this, I should be working out, I should be eating better. When they're having and shoulding all over themselves, it becomes really easy to fall back into that because it's such a common way of speaking, instead of finding a more empowering way of communicating the same thing. And empowering not just to who you're speaking to, but to yourself. So even words and things and phrases that you're not speaking out loud, if you are thinking them to yourselves, changing those words and phrases are just as powerful as if you spoke them out loud. Like, how amazing is it that I get to go to the grocery store and buy whatever it is that I need to make dinner, that I don't have to go to the next town over in order to get my groceries, that I don't have to wait until the market comes to town in order to buy my groceries. I get to go to the grocery store in the middle of the day when nobody's there, or however you're looking at that. When you get to do something versus having to do something, or I should do something, those simple word swaps change the whole energy of what you're saying, the energy of the experience itself. And so I encourage you to take 2-3 days, a whole week of really honing in on what you're thinking and what you're saying, and notice how making those simple shifts and tweaks of the words you are choosing to use, how that changes your mindset, how it changes the mundane experiences that maybe you didn't want to do, that weren't exciting, that have just become things to check a box off. And how much more pleasure and enjoyment you can get from those experiences simply by shifting the energy around them. So play around with the words that you're choosing to use and notice how that shifts your energy around those tasks, those to-dos, even the to-dos, your to-do list. Change that to your I get to list. I get to do all of these things. There are people that do not get to do all of these things, but I do. And how cool is that? So when you find yourself moving down that negative spiral, or even that plateau of just boredom and existence, where you're like, this is just what I do every Tuesday, like the monotony, let yourself shift that energy into a more upward spiral, a more positive and exciting experience. So the third thing that I want to touch on as we really work to let that inner spark come back to life, that illumination from within really shine out is self-compassion. And so it's really easy for us to have compassion for others, to be empathetic and understanding. Many of us find it much more challenging to have that same compassion for ourselves. And so we can get really hard on ourselves and really down when we're working to make changes in our lives, when we are working on our growth and our expansion and really working to become that best version of ourselves. When things don't play out like we think they should, like we expect them to or want them to, it can be really easy to allow that self-doubt and that pity and that victim mindset start to take the forefront. And when that happens, we lose that compassion for ourselves. And I think what happens for me, and I think what happens for a lot of people, is that when we don't have that compassion for ourselves, or when we start to lose it, instead of being open and receptive, right, our heart open and receptive, we start to close in because we don't want people to see us in this vulnerable state. We don't want people to see us in a way that we're currently thinking about ourselves. So if we're thinking about ourselves in that victim mindset or that negative way, we can think that that's how everybody is seeing us. And instead of allowing our hearts to be open and vulnerable and sharing our truth with people in the moment, we begin to close ourselves off. And we start to close ourselves off, we become even more judgmental of ourselves and less compassionate. And so then we close in even more, trying to protect ourselves when all we're doing is isolating ourselves. So really noticing, maybe you notice the mental chatter of that, but in my experience, how I have noticed it, and really noticed it in a way that causes me to pause and step back and assess how I'm thinking and talking to myself, is how I feel it in my body. It is that contraction. I start to notice myself hunching and pulling inward to protect my heart, to protect myself from the stories that I'm telling myself or what I think people are thinking or saying about me. When if I could just allow myself to be a little more open, a little more patient with myself, a little more loving with myself. It doesn't require me to necessarily jump into action or to even reframe anything in that moment. It could simply be allowing my shoulders to soften, letting my heart shine just a little bit more open, and just sitting. And not giving credence to those negative self-talk and judgmental thoughts that are coming through. Recognizing that on our journey of growth and expansion and evolution, we're going to go through peaks and valleys. We're going to have seasons where we feel so good and so open and so connected. And then we're going to have seasons where we want to crawl into a hole and not see or speak to anyone and just disappear. And when we're in those seasons that feel like everything is crumbling around us and that we can't say the right thing or do the right thing, and who am I to do any of these things? Sometimes all it takes is just that moment of pause, that deep breath into the heart to reset yourself and to come back to that love and that compassion that you have for so many others. Bring that love, that compassion to yourself and see how drastically your life will change. How much more love and peace you will experience because you are giving that to yourself. You're not waiting for somebody else to give it to you. Okay, so the final piece that I want to talk about today, as we really allow that inner spark and light to come through, as we work to reignite that light that has maybe dimmed a little bit inside of us, is our connection to God, our connection to Source, our connection to creation. Whatever word resonates with you, it's this connection to something that is bigger than us. And when I say that it's something that's bigger than us, I don't mean that it's outside of us. It's not a separate entity that sits outside of us. God, Source, creation, universe is a part of us, and we are a part of it. And when I really cultivated my connection to God, to Source, to creation, when I really started to form that relationship in a way that was meaningful for me, I gained so much more peace and clarity around my purpose, clarity around the bigger picture and how I fit into that picture. Because everything is interwoven and interconnected. And when I take a step back and get the opportunity to really feel and see how my connection to God and Source is part of this bigger plan, it allows me to move with more confidence, with less fear and doubt, because it's not about me. It's about how I am meant to serve in this bigger plan. So this connection, the spiritual piece of the puzzle, has been paramount in my growth, and it has shifted and evolved over the years. So just like I talked about with the habit stacking and being open to how your habits can evolve and what you need in the season of your life, allow your spirituality to evolve and grow. Let yourself be open to new ways of experiencing that connection to God, that connection to Source, connection to universe, connection to creation. But lean into that connection. Don't feel or think like you have to go through life on your own. Because even when you are surrounded by friends and family and people in your life that care about you, it can still feel lonely and daunting and like you are fighting an uphill battle when you don't have that connection to something bigger. Because while your friends, your family, your friends, coworkers, while all of the people in your life that do truly care about you, they don't know everything that's within you. Even if you are an open book and share everything about yourself, they do not know everything about you. But God does. Creation does, because Source, Universe, God, they are a part of you. And so when you nurture that connection, you start to recognize and realize that you don't have to do life alone. And not only that you don't have to, but that you're not doing life alone. So in those moments, in those times of despair and overwhelm and heartache, and those times when you just don't think anybody would quite understand how it is you're feeling, lean into that connection with something bigger. And watch how it transforms your life. So, lean into it. And let yourself explore what that looks like. Don't be afraid to try on different versions. For me, that connection to God, to Source, it doesn't matter the name that I put on it, because it's a feeling within. So I could say God, I could say universe, I could say Source, creation. It's a feeling within myself. So don't get hung up on the words. Lean into the feeling. All right, that is a wrap on part 2 of our Reignite, the Illumination Within. And I'm just so grateful for all of you that have tuned in. I would love if you shared your biggest takeaway, maybe share a habit or a mindset shift that you are going to implement to really help rekindle that inner flame. And as always, keep feeling it all and allow your inner light to shine. Thanks for tuning into Cop of Feeling. If you loved this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share it with someone you think will love it too. I'll see you next time as we keep exploring all of the feels. But until then, stay connected to your heart and keep feeling it all.